Common Side Effects just had its season finale, and it's safe to say that I am more than impressed. Before I get started on anything, if you clicked on this video out of pure curiosity for the show, then I recommend you go and watch the first episode, which is completely free here on YouTube. I will link that first episode in the description, and I seriously recommend you watch all of season 1. Besides that, huge spoiler warning for the finale and most of the season. Now, holy shit is this show good. As I mentioned earlier, I actually stumbled across this show by watching it here on YouTube in the car with my girlfriend. Thought it was another one of those Adult Swim's quirky little comedy shows that I might turn on in the background. But after starting Common Side Effects, I realized that this show was oddly mature. And as I kept watching, I quickly became a fan. The season finale of Common Side Effects has been absolutely amazing, and I just want to use this video as an open discussion and talk about my thoughts. First things first, Marshall is stupid. He's dumb as hell. Let's get that out the way. It's obvious that Marshall is incredibly naive, and ever since the season finale, I've been kind of mad at his character. But it just kind of proves that his writing is this good. Marshall's behavior makes sense in a way, but it's also very annoying. In the beginning of the show, like the first episode, one of the first things we see is that Marshall is an idealist. He wants everyone to be happy, to be healthy, and he wants everything to be okay. We can see that he's the type of person to go out and help someone, to go give someone a hand just because. Even that scene where he's looking for the mushrooms, he flips that beetle over, and even that one specific scene shows Marshall's personality. So when he comes across someone like Hildy, Marshall is 100% the type of person to take any opportunity he has. I'm sure he's smart enough to know that Hildy's a bad person, that Hildy is untrustworthy, but does he really have any other options? And because he decided to trust Hildy and go on with this very stupid mushroom camp thing, it kind of blew up in his face, literally. Marshall is such a straightforward character. I think every single character in this show is extremely nuanced, but Marshall is someone that is just extremely easy to understand. He wants what's best for everybody, and whether that be doing something illegal or doing something impulsively, he's gonna do it if it helps someone. I saw a lot of people online talking about how they think Marshall is stupid, which I don't really agree with, because obviously he has all of these conferences and this huge drug business, but then he goes to see someone like Frances and he doesn't realize that she works for Rasutakal. Which makes sense, it can make him seem stupid, but at the same time, like, he obviously likes Frances. He wants Frances to be okay, and he wants to share what he has. So he's not exactly dumb, he's just kind of giving her the benefit of the doubt. Which also, to be fair, Marshall has done probably way too many times in this show so far. I mean, he has died a numerous amount of times now, and he's taken the mushroom so many times, I don't even know what's gonna happen to him next. Which kind of transitions to my next topic, which, oh my god, like this show, this finale, opened up so many different questions and I don't even know where to start. But the mushroom, let's talk about it. When I first started the show and Marshall had taken the mushroom for the first time, I thought the trippy visuals and that weird world that they were in was just like a metaphor, you know, it's just supposed to be what Marshall was experiencing. It makes sense. I mean, the animation in this show is extremely good, and I thought they were just trying to express that. But in the season finale, they started talking about this portal world, and it made me realize when they were talking about the mushrooms earlier in the show, talking about how the mushrooms send signals to each other to communicate, they were not playing. They're genuinely trying to tell us that the mushrooms have some sort of otherworldly communication portal. At first, I really did think that them talking about this communication between Marshall and Frances was kind of, outlandish, but the more I thought about it, the more it makes sense. Like I said earlier, they talked about the communications between the mushrooms, they talked about the emotional connection people have with the mushrooms, and the show is called Common Side Effects, and we still haven't learned what exactly the side effect is. So when we see things like Hildy dumping that tincture into the water supply, or the government having access to these mushrooms, it poses the question, what's going to happen when all of these people have this mushroom in their system? Because we saw firsthand what happened with Marshall. He took the mushroom one last time, and everything was just different that time. He was able to touch into the third dimension from what it seems like a higher dimension, like on some crazy interstellar shit. But at the same time, the only time we've seen this take place is from Marshall. Jonas Backstein took like well over 6 mushrooms, and that dude had a crazy trip. But at the same time, does that mean he's able to tap into that same dimension? Or do you have to have a near-death life experience? But at the same time, Marshall didn't even know he was communicating with Frances. He saw Frances at that table, but he didn't really understand that he was communicating to her. At the end of the finale, he asked her, was that a communication? Is that what really happened? We still have no idea if that was really a metaphor or if it's just some sort of emotional connection, or maybe Marshall can just straight up tap into the fourth dimension. Like, we just don't know. I think this show is going to be that case of we only know what it tells us, because what we know from the beginning of the show is that Marshall told us that the mushrooms grow from the mist, the limestone, and the grass that it grows on. We then learned that Marshall was wrong, and then he was like, oh, the mushrooms are growing because of the toxic waste that Risutakal is dumping on it. And then he was wrong again. It was actually because of Socrates, or the Peruvian turtles. So although I do think Marshall is right about having the tortoise or Socrates being the source of the mushrooms, I think even then we're going to learn that he's wrong again. Because just as he admitted, we know nothing about the mushrooms. It's like 1 in a trillion chance that they grow. And no one knows the true side effects of this mushroom, so it's possible that Marshall isn't right at all and is completely different. Socrates might help the mushrooms grow, but it could be the thing that's growing these mushrooms, or at least giving them the side effects, is something otherworldly. I guess the only thing we can say right now is that it's a true mystery. But one thing that still brings up questions specifically about the mushrooms is the severity of the side effects. Someone like Hildy, who got shot and took the mushroom, we haven't seen any side effects with her at all. Now, it is possible she could be hiding those things from Marshall because she knows how bad it is, but at the same time, she hasn't really shown anything that proves she's even having these side effects in the first place. We saw the guy that Marshall healed, and we can see that he had crazy side effects, like he was losing his mind. He didn't know what was real, he didn't know what was fake, and that was really bad, even though he only took the one mushroom. We saw, I forgot her name, Mushroom Girl. We saw Mushroom Girl's son take the mushroom, and he had some pretty weird side effects, but nothing crazy. Frances took the mushroom as well, and she hasn't really had any reportedly bad side effects, except for being able to communicate with Marshall. And of course, the worst Blue Angel experience we've seen in the show is Jonas Backstein. I mean, this guy is an egotistical, greedy asshole, and he took the mushroom very greedily, and we saw what happened to him. I think his trip and what happened to him was a direct result of his greed. Instead of having a positive outlook on life and trying to share what he has with others, he decides to take everything for himself. And his last conscious moment was him taking something for himself. So when he had that bad trip of him being reborn and shown as a very small person, that was a direct representation of his lifestyle and his mental state. He knows how bad he is, or at least his mind does. He knows that his greed is going to catch up to him, and it's kind of weird how we saw that. Because it seems like that Jonas Backstein is the only person who's taken the mushroom so far and hasn't waken back up from it. So it shows that somehow the mushroom has some sort of consciousness or some way to know what the user is experiencing in their life. If the Blue Angel mushroom just wanted to show this to Jonas Backstein as a reality check and then wake him up, it would have done that. But for some reason, it's keeping him in this endless nightmare. And we can see at the end of the episode, he's still in a coma and he's still unconscious, which means that the mushroom knows that he is a bad person and knows that he's greedy and knows that he shouldn't deserve to have this mushroom. There's a lot of weird, unexplainable things going on in this show, which just makes me want a season 2 so much more. Now, getting away from the mushrooms, I want to talk about the characters in this show, and like I said earlier, about how nuanced they are. I think this show is pretty well written, but the thing that I really love about this show is how well drawn it is in the atmosphere. As easy as it is to look at a character and then make them say, I'm feeling a certain way, I'm thinking this certain thing, it's much more impressive to have that idea in the background or animated on the side. For example, when we see characters like Copano, when we first go to his apartment in the show, some might have picked up that he's divorced, he has a child, and he doesn't really see them anymore. But Copano in the show does not mention this verbally at all. It becomes more obvious in that final episode when we see Copano in the hospital and his son brings him flowers. But taking just that little bit of information and applying it to the rest of the season, it creates so much more atmosphere and depth for Copano as a character. It takes his simple interactions, motives, and ideals and makes them so much more detailed. For example, his connection with Harrington, his best friend, his partner. In common side effects, we can see that Harrington and Copano have a very tight relationship. They're very good friends and they love each other, but they end up having different views by the second to last episode. Copano thinks that they should be doing what's morally right and that they should be pushing towards what the DEA wants them away from. And even that little detail might connect back to his wife and his kid. What happened between their relationship. Maybe Copano was too daring in his last relationship. Maybe he hates himself because he wasn't daring enough, which might be the reason why Copano pushes away from the idea of the DEA telling him what to do. Maybe he wants to take a risk that he wished he took earlier. And it's just small things like that which really helps with these characters. Even characters like Nick, which that dude is annoying as shit. The creators of the show said for themselves that they want to see him do better. Nick is seen as a character who is emotionally unintelligent, someone who you can't really trust, someone who you can't talk to. Nick seems like the type of person to just go out and chase parties and chase fun. And in the show, and Nick's relationship with Frances wasn't looking for someone who wanted to just go out and party. She wasn't looking for a distraction, she wants someone who's going to help her. But at the same time, you can kind of sympathize with Nick because you realize, hey, this dude is just trying to be the best version of himself for Frances, and he doesn't really even know what's going on. There are some times where he does listen to her when he talks about, that bathtub she always wanted, the one that she can fit in, and he talks about the marriage with her. But at the same time, you could point out that Nick is the type of person to not even realize that Frances is struggling, which eventually led to their breakup. It's just so satisfying and surprising to me to see how well written these characters are. Each character has their own morals and their own motives, and it's very clear to tell what those things are. Even a character like Rick, which I thought in the show was just going to be a snobby CEO asshole, this dude has actually changed his life around for the most part, and it actually became a likable character, which is insane. Most CEO characters in any show, any movie, just start as an asshole and then end up as an asshole. Like Jonas Backstein, like that dude is a terrible person and I don't think he's gonna change. Except for maybe after that terrible trip he had, but that's for season 2. But we see Rick start off as this ignorant person who his wife doesn't even talk to him anymore. I mean, this guy is a whole wreckage. He 100% relies on Frances and he just acts like an asshole to absolutely everybody. But once Frances brings this new mushroom to Rick, instead of him acting like this greedy monster, he actually realizes that this is his chance to make his life better. And he has a serious conversation with Frances. Like, yeah, he wants to actually use this to cure people, but Frances has to realize that things like this do cost money, and the business has to stay alive somehow. Even when he brings up the mushroom to Jonas Backstein, he even says to him, isn't the point of the mushroom, isn't the point of the company to save lives? Like, I'm sure Rick as a character enjoys his greed, he enjoys his wealth, but at the same time, he's slowly realizing what his actual job is. Rick is starting to realize things that don't really affect him in his life normally, like Frances's mother dying, his wife not talking to him, even the company failing. And by the season finale of Common Side Effects Season 1, he realizes that he needs to just check up on Frances. He needs to care about Frances because that's the type of person he needs to be. He can't just be an asshole anymore. He realizes how much power he really has. And if you ask me, I really do think that Rick is going to have a redemption arc. I really think that Rick is going to be that character that might just save the day in the end. But one last thing I really wanted to talk about in this show is who is the real enemy at this point? Because Jonas Backstein is in an absolute coma state. That dude is probably gone for a while. Rick is still trying to run that spray sparkle thing. I don't even know what's going on with that. Whatever that is, these aren't real threats to Marshall and Frances. The biggest threat we have right now is the FBI and Cecily. Which is weird because at first Cecily was working for Jonas Backstein, but it seems like now she's kind of just operating on her own. Like she just wants to stop this case just to stop it. The start of season 2 is definitely going to have Frances and Marshall just straight up lost. They're going to be absolutely lost. They're on the top wanted list by the FBI, the DEA, and every other, federal company out there. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen. Is Hildy even a real threat right now? Although she has access to these mushrooms, she doesn't have access to Socrates. It's possible that Frances and Marshall might start an entire new colony using the Peruvian turtles that he ordered from his half-brother. But then what is he going to do with that? Jonas is going to be after him, Hildy's going to be after him, Frances is probably still going to try to use that company idea. Cecily wants him dead, Harrington is going after him as we speak, and I'm sure the media will be all over Marshall within a few days. There is honestly so much to talk about in this show, I could really go on forever, but I really don't want to waste your time. So if you have watched this show and you have any theories or anything you want to talk about, please leave it in the comments. This show is absolutely amazing and I'm really excited for season 2. I think after this season, Common Side Effects is going to be recognized as a very good show. And before I leave, I forgot to talk about one last thing. The animation, like look at this bro, this shit is fucking golden, holy shit. Man, if Invincible had this type of budget, man, don't even get me started.